The jury in the Sean Diddy Combs trial has found the former music mogul not guilty of sex trafficking and racketeering, but did convict Diddy of prostitution offenses, 2 counts of a prostitution offense. Here's a look at the verdict here, a breakdown of the charges. Diddy was found not guilty on that top charge, as you see, of that racketeering and conspiracy that we mentioned. Also found not guilty on 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Now, Diddy was found guilty on the 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. There is a bail hearing scheduled for 5 o'clock today. Diddy is in custody after this verdict. His attorneys want him released while he awaits sentencing on $1 million bond. And of course, the prosecution opposes any release at all. I'm joined now by criminal defense attorney and former Manhattan prosecutor Jeremy Saland. Once again, what is the judge weighing right now, Jeremy? Because on the one hand, you have this argument of, Diddy was not convicted on that top charge. He's already been behind bars for quite some time now and saying that he's not a flight risk. He's been cooperating with the court. The prosecution has a very different feeling.
Yeah, the prosecution is relying on the Bail Reform Act, and they're saying, as a matter of law, barring some exceptions and barring our consent, for example, you cannot release him. In fact, he has to stay in custody. Sure, he was not convicted of that sex trafficking. He was not convicted of the RICO conspiracy, but the Mann Act, this prostitution transportation offense, that still qualifies. He needs to stay in custody. On the flip, what is being said by the defense is, no, by clear and convincing evidence, we've established that he's not a flight risk and he's not a danger to the community or any individual in terms of his conduct once he releases. And they go through in these letters, both of them, explaining their particular positions.
Does his fame help him or hurt him in arguing his bail?
Well, I think it potentially hurts him in the sense that he has access to dollars and access to people to either, if you believe the prosecution, potentially perpetrate more danger to people in the community or to flee. However, that being said, the team for Diddy says quite the opposite. We have his passport. He can't go anywhere. He came to New York on his own. He has actually paid off his mortgage so that he was free of any encumbrances and ultimately could be used for any type of bail package. He is not someone who has demonstrated any violence. And in fact, guess what? The jury found that he wasn't either.
Let's talk more about that case and why the prosecution kind of had so many holes in its case, clearly, as we can see now with this jury verdict. Where do you think they went wrong? Why go after, we talked about this, that the criminal enterprise, was that a mistake in hindsight?
It was an absolute overcharge, and just about anybody other than maybe the prosecutors in the Southern District said this was not that type of a case. Questioning the sex trafficking aside, but it wasn't a RICO organized crime. You think of the RICO organized crime as mobsters. You hear that time and time again. It doesn't need to be, and you could be creative with it, but it allowed them to bring in evidence that might not have otherwise been able to bring in. And for example, that 2016 video of Cassie being beaten pretty badly, that otherwise had no place at this trial. But the jury rejected it, and resoundingly so. Pretty firmly and pretty quickly, even though there were some letters or communication with the court about read back and wanting transcripts.
Let's talk about what he was convicted of, and eventually when we do get to sentencing, again, a maximum potentially, it sounds like, of 20 years. It doesn't seem like that is likely by any means.
Right. So when you hear 20 years, let's break it out. It's a maximum of 10 years for the Transportation and Mann Act for Jane, and the same thing for Cassie. Yes. So you're thinking of it consecutive when people say that, number one. So it's 10 and 10. Number two, that by no means for someone who has any record whatsoever is going to be the guideline that they're going to find themselves at that maximum. So what in their letters we can see that the defense is saying this is more akin to something probably in that low 20-month guideline range, of which 10 months has already been served, and arguably, judge, you shouldn't be giving me any more time served. Whereas the prosecution is saying, we think this is 50 to 60 plus months, and in fact, that's the minimum, and there's more to it. So they're looking at different numbers in terms of what they're seeking the judge to ultimately sentence Combs to.
What do you say to arguments that this is unfair? Cassie and Jane speaking about these horrible things that they went through, and Diddy essentially getting off with not much. Where does the court stand in all of this? Is there a difference that the court is trying to find between what's right and what's legal?
Well, they always have to rely on what's legal, but unique to the federal court as opposed to state court. Whereas if you were acquitted in the state court, that does not come in, that evidence or allegations do not come into your sentencing or potential sentencing. The law does allow the judge to consider those allegations and that evidence, well, I shouldn't say allegations, but the evidence of what was presented beyond the solely the Mann Act prostitution. So the prosecution is going to try to paint a much more ugly picture. At the end of the day, the judge has to do what's just. It may not be easy, and you may not be quote unquote innocent, but you are not guilty as a matter of law. And that has to be followed, and you have to believe in the rule of law, and the judge is going to do his due diligence here.